no offense to anyone carrying them. Yes, there are versions of those that are quite expensive. So they are not carried in this room. So when China comes onto the scene with such cheaper options, cheaper phone options, more people could afford smartphones. According to Statista, about 38.4% of Ugandans own smartphones today. Who then was left behind? It is those that still could not afford a phone and data, and a few who chose to stay away. For the proprietors of social media channels, it is primarily business and influence. I mean, for the owners of TikTok, Facebook, X, and all the rest, for them the primary consideration is business. What the society gains from social media is secondary to the interest of the proprietor. The platforms are used to gather audiences for adverts and to study users' minds, often so as to tailor adverts to policies and tests. As the Harvard Professor of Science and Technology Studies, Sheila Jasanov, has observed, and I quote, "Digital data from countless online interactions can be aggregated and grouped to build remarkably accurate composite pictures of persons' identities, attitudes, and behaviors. Data allow access not just to that person's body or appearance, but to the thinking and acting self within." End of quote. George Orwell's book, 1984, has never been performed on such a large scale as we witness on social media today. Big Brother is literally watching us as we are still in a setting such as a salon. Here, we are under a massive online infrastructure of surveillance, where even our geographical location at any particular moment of online activity can be traced. So where you are now, you can be traced. And I think even when we turn off the location settings, still there are ways of tracing where exactly we are. So Big Brother is watching us everywhere. Where you go, what you say, what you search for, what you watch, leaves a digital trace that you have no power over. It should not surprise you that the next time you visit YouTube, even before you search, it will bring you videos related to what you tend to search. The road becomes the driver. And it should concern us that we are being surveilled that much, or our behavior is being conditioned to act in certain ways. So if you think that when you're watching something in your privacy, you're hiding in your room watching, no one knows what you're watching, it leaves a trace that is attached to your phone, that is attached to your SIM card, that is attached to the network that you're using for watching it. And at any time, someone can tell what you have been watching over time. In fact, they can present a sheet indicating your interests. And for some, you might be surprised to see that your interest has been pornography the entire year, mostly. Yet outside, you present differently. So Big Brother is watching. Because our social media presence means business to the proprietors, their strategic interest is in keeping us glued to our screens. Whatever manipulative mechanism can achieve the result of getting subscribers addicted to the apps, that will be used. Hence now on Twitter or X, when you read one particular tweet and the comments to it, below you will find a lead that reads, "Discover more," often suggesting either very popular tweets or from a person whose tweets you often read. Facebook puts very short attractive videos as you open it, where watching one quickly leads you to the other. TikTok videos quickly run from one to the next, even before you select to watch. YouTube does the same. WhatsApp came up with statuses, which are often catchy memes, photos, and jokes posted by your contacts. If you don't exercise control over yourself, you might spend an entire day viewing statuses. That is the scene that we see today of groups of people, each on their phone. The danger of the resultant addictions is beyond what happened to the ancient philosopher called Thales. It is said that Thales fell into a well as he was observing the heavens. He could not see what was down, he was busy observing the heavens. He ended up falling into a well. We are not different in our concentration now on the phones to which we are getting addicted. The social wells we are falling into are evidently deeper than the physical well of the philosopher Thales. The road is the driver. Which brings me to the question of how social media is transforming human relationships. We do not have to stretch our imagination to understand how social media is transforming human relationships, because the effects are part of our everyday experiences today. We notice that fewer people talk to each other in physical spaces. Even at a workshop like this, break time means time to check what is going on WhatsApp, on Twitter, on Facebook and TikTok. Because of an addictive fear of missing out, we feel that there must be something more interesting going on social media than the conversation we can have with a colleague or a student. We observe how difficult it is to sustain uninterrupted conversation today, even at home. We constantly convince ourselves that we are going to social media because there is something important we are going to do there. The same way an addicted smoker tells himself that the next cigarette they are going to smoke is needed. It is not easy when the road is the driver. At physical events like this, some of us have become keener on communicating to those who are not around about what is happening than keenly following what is actually happening. We can hardly pay attention to what is physically happening in class, meetings, places of worship, restaurants, at a home meal, in cinema, in a taxi, on the road, even in the toilet. On a light note, but a serious one, social media has increased the time people spend in toilets. Don't be surprised whenever you check, you find the door is engaged. Someone could have forgotten about what took them there. It may not be the case, as we might imagine, that a person who does not pay attention to those around him or her in a conversation is simply bad-mannered or uncultured. Many behaviors are acquired by habituation. The repeated practice of something until it becomes a habit over which we may have no control. The mental process that facilitates the way we always feel the urge to check our phones for updates is not different from that which pushes an alcoholic to keep adding another drink until they can't find their way back home. But we will always find a way to convince ourselves that ours is not an addiction. Studies on addiction show that any addiction depends on brain chemicals, especially the chemical called dopamine, as the responsible neurotransmitter. When we get a notification of an email, a tweet, or WhatsApp message on phone, the brain releases dopamine. When this is done repeatedly with our attention, dopamine starts getting released even without notifications. We then start reflexively checking our phones every now and again. More than Pavlov's dog, if you know that experiment, we start salivating even when the bell hasn't rung, wondering why it is not ringing. The road is the driver at that point. Following many confirmatory studies, psychologists have come up with a name for this tactile hallucination. It is called the phantom vibration syndrome, referring to the false perception that one's phone or other technological device is vibrating when it is not. Hence, a reduction in concentration. Why you always have to pull out your phone and check if there is something, or you feel like your phone is notifying you even when you keep checking your phone as if you have something. At that point, it is significant. It is the same way someone will pull out to see them. Even when they're going to eat, they're in a place where they can't smoke, they find themselves pulling it out and then they realize and take it back. So if you feel that when your hand is not on the phone, something is wrong, or there is something going on that you're missing, then that is a point at which you should be reminded that something is going wrong. Actually, some of our thumbs have gone a bit lame, but they are always like this because they are used to scrolling. So even when you're not scrolling, the thumb is waiting for something, for a screen to scroll. So when you find someone on compound with their thumb like this, just know that they are dealing with something that perhaps has become stronger than them. Hence, a reduction in concentration. Studies have also shown that individuals with heavy social media use had minor gray matter on their brains, yet the gray matter is responsible for attention control. So, if your neighbor here has been on and off phone all through, I hope I have helped you with a possible diagnosis. If someone near you is not concentrating, they keep pulling out their phone, I hope now you're able to understand what is going on. I know now some are going to painfully put them in the pockets or somewhere, but in their heads, something will keep telling them, you have to check, you're missing something. Based on observation of American society, the MIT psychologist Sherry Turkle describes today's youth as alone together. They are, and I quote, they are absorbed in individual devices, unable to break free and form meaningful multidimensional real-world connections. End of quote. They just extend their hands on the screen and they touch love. In the Ugandan context, and even in America, I do not think that Sherry's description only applies to youth. Perhaps mostly the youth, but several people my age and above are guilty as accused. Of course, an African old man or old woman addicted to their phone looks a little more awkward. In many traditional African societies, these are the figures children traditionally gathered around for stories about life. Katijaji Atacha Rabusim is laughing alone on TikTok. Philosophers, especially philosophers of society, should ask, what are the social and epistemological implications, implications to knowing, to knowledge, to thinking? What are the implications of the rise of the human that cannot pay attention? What does it mean that today many people can hardly pay attention, many people can hardly focus on? What does it mean to a human that is more interested in those that are not physically present? A society where people are keener on counting online friends than physical ones, where friendship is initiated by a click to add and ended by a click to unfriend or to block, and where friends are strangers anyway. that we have friends on Facebook whom we don't know, strangers. Even when you meet them, you can't recognize them. But you say that I have 100,000 friends on Facebook. A society where conversational, physical interaction is diminishing. What does all that mean to us? Evolutionary theorists, sociologists, and philosophers have variously explained the social function of conversation, especially indicating that it is more than mere communication, that conversation is not just about communicating. There is much more than that. The French philosopher Jean Baudrillard argues that conversation bonds humans beyond transactional interaction. When it is physical, the interaction is more likely to come with warmth, empathy, and the feeling of engaging with a real human being with feelings, desires, and vulnerabilities like any of us. It is easier to interpret a person in physical presence by paying attention to their appearance, their subtle gestures, their facial expressions, and manner of speech to judge their personality, intentions, and reliability. Friendships formed out of such engagement are relatively more informed of who we are dealing with, and they tend to be more sustainable than the friendships that we create on social media. But this is not to say that from social media we cannot get, or there cannot emerge meaningful friendships. It's also possible, but less likely in comparative terms. But even beyond friendship, it is relatively harder to hurt the other in their physical presence compared to what we are capable of in virtual space or on social media. Sometimes on social media you read a comment from someone and you get shocked that it has come out of that person. Something they would never say physically. The internet curtains afford us more boldness and propensity for bluntness, rudeness, and insensitivity. And this becomes a danger to relationships. When the distance combines with social media's provision for immediate response or reaction, that on social media you can respond immediately, even without thinking, this exacerbates the danger. Usually, when we cannot find means to immediately respond to information or a phenomenon that has triggered us in the physical world, we are forced to take time to think through it. When someone annoys you, or you think about something that a person did to you, you get annoyed, you don't have a phone. That means you will take time to think through it and then respond later when you meet the person or when you can communicate, when you have had some time to think through it. But what happens when social media allows us immediate response? What happens? I think you already have an idea. Maybe by the next day when you can meet the person who has annoyed you if you don't have a phone, you have calmed down and grown to think about the information differently. But with WhatsApp or X or Twitter, we are often likely to impulsively fire and then think afterwards. By the time you realize that you have overreacted, a relationship is already wounded. It is not uncommon for people to run to social media to shoot someone over suspicions that are not subjected to any scrutiny. Before social media, you would take some time to think about ending a relationship. There would even be some time to talk through the differences. Now you get a message on WhatsApp saying, "It is over and don't look for me." Has anyone ever received such a message here? It is over and don't look for me. And even if you wanted to look for them, you're immediately blocked. So totally no access. Unlike in the physical world, where you can bargain, they move to the next room, you also go there to explain yourself. But here a person blocks you without giving you the right to respond. the right to explain yourself. As soon as one gets angry, they text. After all, there is even no time for thinking. In the same way, intimate relationships can now easily start out of excitement and the unreflective flattery that social media permits. Moreover, the conflicts that arise out of social media's permission for bluntness, rudeness, and impulsive immediate reaction are given a virtual immortality by the internet. You have heard of the saying that the internet does not forget. So what is posted there will stay for ages. Before, you could offend a person and they forget with time. But today, informational traces are lasting. They persist through time, sedimenting histories that are less amenable to personal control or erasure than the lives lived in the pre-digital era. Even if one chose to forgive, the object of offense remains hovering around the internet and often comes back to scratch the wound long after the offender has apologized. Even when you annoy someone, you apologize, perhaps you go back and delete what you posted. Someone has already taken a screenshot and shared it elsewhere. And you no longer have control over that screenshot. It will remain there. Even if a person has forgiven you, whenever they see this thing, it somehow scratches the wound afresh. In his book titled The Digital Era, rather the Digital Term by Westerer, he says that the digital era of the fourth industrial revolution has come along with a gossip revolution. Social media is rooted in the human tendency to gossip, out of natural curiosity and a lazy desire to know. Gossip is also explained to be an evolutionary human inclination that facilitates group survival. So gossip is not an entirely bad thing. It is natural to human beings. It is part of what we instinctively acquire for survival. It is one of the ways through which we access information, and a lazy way of accessing information, even for those that may not seriously look for it. Traditionally, there were times for gossip at the village well, in the market, at the drinking place, in grazing times, and so on. Now all time is good enough for gossip. Even at midnight while in your bed, or when in office alone, you can gossip. The contribution of gossip to social conflict needs no explanation, more so in a society that has no time to think through what it receives. For the significance of thinking in sustaining social relationships and fostering progress, I will now turn to how social media is impacting on thinking and knowledge production. As already observed by many, the fourth industrial revolution, as the current era has come to be known, is characterized by technological advances which are merging the physical, the digital, and the biological worlds in ways that create both huge promise and potential peril. Through the ages, humanity has survived and progressed through innovations for improving life. This obviously means that thinking and knowledge production have been at the center of human survival and progress. When thinking itself is now at risk, we should be deeply concerned. One may argue that in every epoch, thinkers and innovators have been a minority, and that it shouldn't worry us when masses on social media can no longer think deeply. Some few people will still think, and they will continue innovating for the rest. It could be argued that way, that much as social media is keeping many of us away from thinking because we have no time for reflection, there are a few people who will continue thinking. They can innovate for the rest of us. But still we should be concerned. And by the way, I think there are so many signs to show how thinking is diminishing, how there is a reduction in thinking in our society. You just have to look at the things that we call trends. You just have to look at the things that motivate us to behave in certain ways. That when a person builds a house looking in a particular way, within a short time you find that everyone else is imitating that. When a house is painted in a way that one likes, they will copy that, other people will copy the same. That you can enter a house, many of the houses in Uganda, by the way, houses of a particular size, and you can already predict where the sitting room is, where the dining is, where the bedrooms are, and that there will be a corridor. This indicates that there are few people who are actually thinking to create new things. Because we can come up with different structures of houses. So when you see everyone building the same kind of house, that should worry us. It means that many of us are not thinking. Or when you see it becoming a trend that when everyone is shaving their head clean, everyone else follows by shaving theirs clean without any particular reason, but the only reason is that it is the trend, then it means that those people are not really thinking. Because a thinking person should be able to make independent decisions, not just following what everyone else is doing. So part of this is out of the fact that social media is keeping us away from thinking, but also about many other factors, including the nature of our education, which focuses more on exams, on the teacher giving us material and us handing back what the teacher gave us, what is called the banking approach to education, as Freire called it. So there are so many other factors, but social media is one of the contributors. Such a world should concern us. Gullible masses are susceptible to malignant manipulation, especially by politicians and business people, and they easily become a social burden when they fail in proper discernment. Will the few study for them? Will the few run the private affairs of the masses? Will the few manage social relationships for the masses? Since the few who drive innovations are mainly driven by profit maximization, should they be entrusted with thinking for the majority? But what dangers are caused by technology on thinking and knowledge? We have already talked about how social media is affecting concentration and attention, especially our attention span. The fact that fewer people can pay attention, even for just 5 minutes. Just 2 minutes, there is a distraction. 1 minute, one is already distracted. So if you're keeping just 1 minute on phone, another minute off, can you constructively understand something? Can you be able to listen to something for some time, reflect about it, or even to have some time away from anything else, just thinking? Concentration is very critical to thinking. Knowledge is generated in different ways. Some we acquire by direct observation of what is happening. Even in a noisy place, we can still observe and get to understand something. Some knowledge we acquire by talking to each other. But for most kinds of knowledge, we need time to reflect about both what we register through the senses, what we intuit, and what we know by mental processing. Everyone needs some time off in silence and without distractions, simply to think, to question, to analyze, to synthesize, to deconstruct. I was in the seminary for some time. I mentioned this wherever I go, that I was in the seminary for over 10 years before God refused my advances to priesthood. I actually tell people that God called me out. Another way of saying that I was told initially that I was not fit to be a priest. But I went back to another seminary until I got convinced myself that I couldn't be. But in the seminary, we had a period every day to talk, a period that was called Silentium Manuum, that is Latin. It means total silence. So every day we had a period for total silence. It was a time when you are not supposed to talk to anyone, not supposed to talk to the other, just reflect. It was usually for about 15 minutes or 20 minutes. If you are found talking to someone, that was of course taken to be breaking the rules of the seminary. We were simply supposed to reflect. It is only later that I appreciated this practice. By the time I came across Socrates saying that an unexamined life is not worth living, the seminary already taught us to constantly examine our lives through moments of quiet meditation. A person who never takes any time off for meditation, we should always be suspicious of them when they are talking. Where do they get what they are always talking about? If they never take time off to reflect, they never take time off to read, but they are always talking. What are they talking about? If you have no time for meditation, no time for reading, I would say you even have no right to talk. Today, with the social media, human busy running after fragments of information, news, and humor from waking up to going back to bed. When do we take time off to reflect about all that we come across? When do we get time to reflect about life? With each of us split into what Gegan refers to as a multiplicity of self-investments, being invested in so many things, dividing yourself into so many investments on social media, and no room left for thinking, the road is the driver. Can we critically think without capacity to concentrate? To process ideas systematically from one analytical point to another? Can we sit down, like Karl Marx would sit at a corner in the British Museum, to simply think and produce knowledge? With dopamine crazily sending disruptive signals that there is a new notification on your phone, can you focus for 1 straight hour? For René Descartes, the French philosopher René Descartes, the first thing that he discovered as self-evident is what he put in the expression, I think, therefore I am. That the proof for his existence was the fact that he was thinking. For this era, the proof for our existence is something like this. I'm on my phone, therefore I am. I'm on my phone, therefore I exist. Westerner notes that on social media, facts and opinions, fiction and ideology are easily mixed, sometimes producing a web of nonsense. Considering how the social media jungle is characterized by such a thick mix of insightful ideas, lies, pure junk, and nicely packaged poison, shouldn't it concern us that we do not have time to think through one lie before we are bombarded with another? Lies have for long been part of the human condition. Our propensity as humans to tell lies is not new. But when we acquire technologies to facilitate faster production and circulation of lies, the concern grows bigger. When manipulative lies acquire the capacity to travel faster than lightning, while brains slow down, the consequences can be dire. Some analysts have observed that social media has self-cleaning capacities, whereby untruths are quickly dialectically checked by counter-revelations. Someone sends you something wrong, something false, then you get another that helps you to verify. That is what some people have argued, that social media checks itself. Granted, but on many an occasion, The cleaning has come in late, after damage. More than ever before, Jonathan Swift is on the spot in his observation that, and I quote, "Falsehood flies and the truth comes limping after it, so that when men come to be undeceived, it is too late." So is the popular version that falsehoods run around the world as truth is still putting on its boots. The web of lies of the COVID period are a good example here. For many years, the challenge with documented knowledge was where to find it. But in our era, or in the era of people older than me, the challenge was where to find information, especially information that is written, where to find books, where to find libraries. I wonder what it was like for those who did their bachelors in the 1960s to find information for their coursework. But when one found it, I imagine that much of what succeeded to get the opportunity of being published went through rigorous gatekeeping for some degree of quality, that it would be checked, and by the time it's published, to some degree it was worth reading. In today's infodemic, as I call it, an epidemic of information, the challenge has been reversed to that of digging through heaps of information to find what to believe. That every day we are bombarded with loads and loads of information on each of these social media apps. And the challenge is having the ability to sieve that information, to look for what is worth knowing, what is worth believing, what is worth following. As Westerer observes, with all the answers within reach, it is tempting to switch off thinking. Why labor to think through a problem when I can simply ask Google? All these days when you can easily ask AI, when you can ask ChatGPT, why should you think? So some of us have totally given up on thinking. The internet is thinking for us. That is partly how we have produced humans with neither an idea of their own, nor any systematic comprehension of what they consume from others. We collect several random bits, which, even in their contradictions, we can comfortably accommodate them beside each other. It is an era of epistemically excitable people, people who are very easy to excite with bits of knowledge, people who are mostly eager to forward whatever tickles them on face value. In any case, the desire to get more online following demands that we excite our publics, especially with emotive content. What does it mean to be an influencer? Does it involve prompting people to take time to think? Whatever requires much thinking should be avoided because it demands for what the addicted public cannot give. It's partly why you hardly find academics among those regarded as influencers. No one has time for the hesitation of academics to take positions without researched evidence. The masses can't wait to move to the next tweet or WhatsApp message. We fear to miss out. The road is the driver. When the philosopher Erich Fromm wrote in his book Escape from Freedom in 1941, his concern about the media was that the rise of the TV and radio expert, who was often invited to analyze the world and events, was killing thinking. People regurgitated views of the experts and hardly thought of their own. Perhaps he had a point. When social media eventually democratizes media, everyone becomes an expert of sorts. Everyone here is an expert. If not on relationships, you are an expert on plants, you are an expert on what?
Religion.
Religion, So everyone is some kind of expert on social media. So what happens when everyone is some sort of an expert? While the fear of Eric was that the trained philosopher, sociologist, psychologist, or political scientist was turning the masses into surrogate thinkers, now the expert hardly gets audience. No one wants to listen to experts, because why waste time listening to them when I'm an expert as well? We are at the stage of what Andrew King called the cult of the amateur, where the audience is running the knowledge show. Kasuku, Rumbuye, Bad Black, Banjo, Full Figure, they took away the microphone from the professor, the agriculturist, and the social worker. In fact, Bad Black was recently appointed an ambassador of a certain university in Uganda to harvest from her huge social media following. The road is the driver, even for universities. I'm not saying that this should be blamed on the new influencers. And this is not to deride Bad Black or Bajo or Mbuye to mean that they are nothing or they shouldn't be currently aligned in their favor. In some that had abandoned. It could be a combination of sheer luck and their ability to study the dynamics and demands of the information age. While academics were busy dismissing social media as unserious, as I said in the beginning, the Rumbuyes understood that it was a tide that was not to be taken back. They strategized accordingly, as some of us in the academia still hoped on being discovered and looked for in our conservative analog worlds by the busy and addicted public. We are eventually going virtual and devising ways, even by academia, devising ways of taking our knowledge and research findings there. Maybe as students you're also trying to do that. When you get some knowledge here, you take it out through social media, but of course by innovating what people can listen to. As one of the professors, my colleague at McKinley University often says, we are putting ourselves on the agenda. He often says that if you don't put yourself on the agenda, no one will put you there. So even academics or institutions of higher learning, we are learning to put ourselves on the agenda, especially as we realize that there is one of our disciplines. Many do not even care a what if we are deleted from the list of things to be studied. It is no longer about how important a discipline such as business studies, Islamic studies, religious studies, sociology. It's not important whether what such a discipline is. It is about our capacity to demonstrate to our busy publics in very simple terms about what we can do that they care about, or even why they should care at all. We no longer have to take it for granted that everyone will appreciate the value of critical thinking in an era where thinking means scheming, shrewdness, wit, opportunism, and capacity to attract attention. As we decry the assault that social media has waged against thinking and knowledge production, we should also reflect on how to strategically position our ideals as feasible alternatives, including how we can utilize social media itself as a space for counter-organization, grounding on evolutionary theory. As I conclude, grounding on evolutionary theory, the late notorious American rapper Tupac Shakur told us, you either evolve or you disappear. I don't know whether any of you knows Tupac Shakur. Yeah? Then it means some of you belong to another generation. Or maybe somehow Tupac Shakur has survived even for this generation. So, should the road become our driver too? Well, we need to first understand how the road became the driver. We need to first understand how the road came to be our driver. Then we can meaningfully find ways of claiming the steering wheel. Because we realize that as of now, the steering wheel is in the hands of the road, not us. We could hope in the idea of Hegel, the dialectic, that every civilization contains within itself seeds of its own destruction, and that even social media contains within it seeds for its own destruction. Maybe it will destroy itself. It is through such. I'm not a doomsday prophet. Media is evidently on a course towards its own destruction, for it is inevitably bound to create some sort of an intolerable state of nature where life, as Thomas Hobbes called it, where life is short, nasty, solitary, brutish, and poor. Part of that state of nature is already here with us. My hope is in the fact that our instinct towards self-preservation might not allow us to watch ourselves hitting the iceberg. We might not watch ourselves getting extinct. We might not want to watch ourselves with society becoming meaningless. We might not want to watch ourselves with friendship becoming meaningless without us retaining the capacity to converse and relate to each other. The self-destructive direction will destroy many of us, but it will inevitably produce a new human who will have learned to be different. I thank you. I hand back the microphone. I don't know whether it's someone else who wants to answer the questions, if any.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Some of us at the moment call him Professor Sentongo, for that deliberation or for that communication. Hope everyone has got something, however little it is, out of his speech or communication. So let's have a few questions, then he can answer them.
My name is Jalia Manager. I just want to ask one question. Like, how have you managed to comprehend all what you're doing in this contemporary world? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much, Doctor. Individually, I'm very privileged to have been part of the congregation that had you today. I was highly expecting to get what I expected, and really, I'm very appreciating. I even feel I have no question, but we need to get a resolution to this disease that we hate, social media. You said the drive by the road has already driven us so far, and we could not easily claim the wheel. I'm inquiring. Education became one of the revolutions that we had. Education became as something that can easily help us from the small and the little degree analogs we had stayed in. Unfortunately, social media has even proved that education can do nothing to ourselves as far as the road has driven us. If education cannot be the only thing that can help us retrieve the will to the journey that we are attaining, what else? Because religion itself, when you look at these platforms, people have not accredited religion to something that would have streamlined us to a better journey. But education was something that really carried us to like milestones that we couldn't expect. But it is now degraded. It's not something that we can celebrate about. So help me retrieve education as something that could have at least helped us attain the will back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are honored to have you today, Dr. Swire. For me, my question is about how do we navigate the accessibility and credibility of this information we see online, we read online, because social media has become so part of us that you said in your speech that if someone is not on social media, they feel like they are left behind. True, they be left behind. So how do we navigate this complex question of social media? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spire. For me, as I listened in, you sounded truly like a medical doctor. And the way I sat, I was diagnosed with a disease of a troubled attention span. Now, doctor, with this human instinct to preservation that you mentioned, I want to ask, as a consumer of social media yourself, I probably follow your links. Do you suffer from this? And if you do, what are some of your personal habits that you engage in to beat this disease? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lastly, let's have this.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Doctor, we are so grateful to have you here. My question is, can this very social media and academia help us to claim back our will from the road?
Sorry, I missed that.
Can this very social media and the academia help us to claim back our will?
Thank you so much. Mr. Spire, I have two questions. One, putting all other factors constant, would you recommend your child to use social media? And why would you answer the yes one? The last one is, do you believe in social media privacy? For example, WhatsApp has this feature called the encryption. Should I consider my messages that I send to my friend not containing any other third party? Thank you.
I think that was the last question. For the interest of time,
so as a student of Professor Hansa, I'm really to ask the last question.
please.
Prof, thank you so much. I'm reflecting on the metaphor of the road as the driver. So in the context as the professors and the universities are putting themselves on the agenda and fully put on them. In this room here we have administrators, we have lecturers. What about in your space, as a person who is walking the talk of the theory and the practice from the university, public intellectualism, to wherever you're doing, how should the teachers all the lecturers and the professors at the university like this one, which is starting in a very competitive social media market, really do need to make sure that they still be relevant in the context. The last question is, one of the things that make a university is research. How should we as lecturers or as teachers and students be able to maneuver and make a comeback from the social media and engage with it holistically to contribute to meaningful social transformation? Thank you.
Sorry, I missed the last bit, the last part.
So I'm saying that what makes the university to be relevant is how to contribute to research. Now, since we're experiencing the way the social media is making us to move at the pace where some of us are not appreciating and even be able to make comeback, then holistically, because it is a fact that we can't go with it as a way of organizing society. Because even before they write to you official communication about RENEB has already published on their Twitter handle, even before they send the communication to principal that they have made changes on this. So the paper will come later. The information will be there. So what I'm asking is that, what will be your last advice as a person who has engaged on this for some time, to be able, as for us who are growing in this place as you've seen it, to be able to be overcome this colonium of social media as a threat? It is being taken by this, because we are in a place where you find out that you can send an email to the lecturer, and then the lecturer replies after 2 weeks, and you wanted something immediate. And they will claim that I was not online. And yet we are seeing you are doing very tremendous work. We are reading your work everywhere because of social media. How can we learn from that?
Okay. Just one last one. We have some online users who are on our YouTube channel, and there is just one question from here. And this one that actually comes in from one of our lecturers who is currently in Norway, but he's privileged to be taking in your content today. He asks, in a world where information is instantly accessible, is the true purpose of education to teach knowledge, or to cultivate wisdom in discerning and applying that knowledge? That comes in from Mr. Mate Asman. In a world where information is instantly accessible, is the true purpose of education to teach knowledge, or to cultivate wisdom in discerning and applying that knowledge? Thank you.
I think Prof can take over.
Yeah, thanks for those very interesting questions. Yeah, thanks for those very interesting questions. Yeah, but there is also some other observation that I've made as you are asking questions, which is unusual. The fact that almost 90 or 95% of you are not on phones. Is it because I've been talking about it and you're conscious? In research, there is what we call a Hawthorne effect. Hawthorne effect means where people change behavior because they know they are being watched. So you go to study a community, but the community expected you to go there as a researcher, and they are ready for you. And they only show you behavior that they want you to see. Or what would happen when teachers would come for school inspection, and the teacher who is going to be inspected knew ahead of time that an inspector is coming, so they would notify us, the students, and even train us or coach us on how to behave on that day. So if I call you any name, just respond, even if it's not your name. So if you're asking a question and I say, yes, Amina, what do you think? Don't say, I'm not Amina, just continue and go ahead and ask, because the teacher knew they were being observed and they were acting along. So I don't know whether it's because we have been discussing this subject or you're often like this. Yeah, but if you're often like this, that is quite commendable. It's not easy these days to get an audience that can focus that much. Even if focus means just looking at you. It's very hard to let people who will look at you even for 5 minutes. They look at you for 2 minutes, the next minute they are back to their phone. Now coming to the questions, they're very interesting questions. I'll try to be fast. How am I able to comprehend all that I do? The question from Jalia. I'm not quite sure I understood you quite well. Whether this means how am I able to select knowledge? How am I able to pick from the multitude of things that I come across? And if that's what you meant, then it's related to a couple of other questions that were asked. Yes, it's about discernment and taking time to think through things. But I'm not saying that I'm not a victim to the things that I'm talking about, because quite often I also catch myself being gullible. Following statement, I also share it, only to go back to think and try to verify and realize that actually it's not true. So it is a struggle for each of us, for all of us. For as long as you're out there on social media, there are things that will present as truth, that if you're not too keen and patient, it will be very difficult for you even to get a light sense to tell you that this is not true. So it would be basically about taking time to think, but which time often we don't give ourselves, or we don't have. Yesterday I came across a picture. There is this lady who is vying, contesting for a seat. Is it in Kisoro? The new lady. Yeah, the pretty lady. What's her name? Sultan. Yes, there have been comments about her, but mostly about her looks, her appearance. So last night, I come across a picture of that lady with Bobby wine, with Chagulani. The lady is holding a glass of wine, Chagulani is seated as if the lady is posing with Chagulani. And the caption was, what do you think the caption was? Huh? Huh? What do you think it was? Something like, busted. Like, we have revealed what this is about. We have known that these people have a relationship. And I immediately, of course, without so much attention, you would think that the picture was real. Then I just scanned below. There was someone else, a journalist, who put another picture and said misinformation. And put the original picture of Chagulani seated in that position in a setting that was totally different. And then later I saw the image of that lady holding a glass in a totally different context. But this person had combined them and it looked like they were together in a certain private place. Now what normally happens, many of us, you don't have the time to think, because you have to look for more information, more exciting things. So you share and move on. Or you forward to a friend, have you seen this? Have you seen so and so? They have been busted. Then you go on to read another meme, another joke. So it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of consciousness, I would call it, but which only comes with training yourself. Deliberately training yourself to do it. I'll talk more about it in response to one other question here related. But before that, if education can't help us claim the will, what will? The question is about the nature of education. I already mentioned that some of our education is already problematic. This education that is training us to pass exams, which has been for so long the tradition in Uganda, that people go through school, you can ask them what they learned, and they clearly have a mastery in terms of grammar of what they were taught in school, but they can't think through it. If that's the education we are talking about, then the road will continue driving us. And I relate this to the last question that was asked from YouTube. Education should no longer be about delivering information, much of which information is available out there. In some of the classes now, depending on how serious the students are, all you do is to give them the course outline. You just come in class, introduce a topic, and they go and look for their own information. They go and search out, and then come back and you discuss. But we know that what happens these days, even when you try that, they will go and ask AI. They'll go and type the coursework question if it's coursework. They type it in ChatGPT, and that's all you get as coursework. So we are challenged on our side as educators to think a lot, to be able to innovate how we can adjust to this kind of setting. Education generally should be about changing the mind, not really feeding the mind. If it is feeding the mind, people can feel their minds. But changing the mind to be critical, changing the mind to be imaginative, the mind to be innovative, I think that is the most important education. You realize that some of the things we are trained for today, the world is changing so fast. Even before you get your degree, your knowledge is already outdated. What you learned in business administration has already been overtaken. What you learned in IT is now irrelevant. Some of us who took some basic courses on computer, if I look back at the things that I studied, I even laugh at myself. Because it is totally irrelevant. I learned how to use a floppy disk, course which I managed to use at the time, but now that knowledge is useless. So what then should we learn? Education should mostly open our minds to be able to look for knowledge on our own, to be able to think through situations even when they are different. That's why we see that people from settings where they are equipped with such skills, they can fit anywhere. They simply go somewhere, they quickly learn about that society, they learn about how things run. I don't know whether you realize that foreigners come here when we are crying that there are no jobs. Within a short time they have found opportunities and they are prospering. When Ugandans are saying that there are no jobs, we have looked elsewhere, we have tried things, they are not working, a foreigner comes here almost having nothing. Within a short time they have too much, they have seen the opportunities. Sometimes it's because they are coming from a context where they have more challenges and therefore they are being pushed to think. Or it could also mean that in our context we have not been taught how to think and innovate and imagine, so we are looking for places where we can deploy what has been put in our heads. So it is like someone who has been given a hammer and they are looking around for nails. If they fail to find nails to hammer, they say, my hammer is useless now. So instead of acquiring knowledge of selecting which tool to use where, and if there is no tool, how do I make the tool myself? Yeah, that is my quick answer to that, that it should be more about opening up the mind. In fact, I would advise that every institution should be teaching critical thinking as a cross-cutting course. This should be a course to be taught whether one is studying IT or business or communication. Everyone should learn critical thinking. Many of the problems we are suffering is because our people are so gullible, because our people cannot think through things. Even something that appears obvious, that anyone who takes a little effort to think will be able to know that this is not true. Someone has already taken it for the truth. What does that show? That there is a certain inability to reflect and think. So we need this regardless of what one is studying. Maybe here could be a conversation you could start and follow up. I know some institutions have already started doing that. Navigating the credibility of the information, I partly talked about that. It is quite difficult these days telling lies from the truth. There are some apps that are being created to help, but people don't even have time for using the apps. For instance, someone can send a picture that this has been taken in Owino. You can use an app to establish when that picture was taken and maybe where, except if it has been de-identified and someone has removed all the tracers, all the identifiers. But people don't even have, even when you tell them that you can use these tools to assess or to verify information, they will not go there because by going there it means they are missing other information. But we can be helped in verification, of course, on top of using our own insight, our own intuition. Do I suffer from the attention challenge that I'm talking about? Certainly. I grapple with many of the problems that I wrote about here, the problems that I just talked about. But sometimes you ask yourself, am I still thinking? Because you're busy all the time. Leave alone this being busy on social media. When you're not on social media, you're talking to a group like this. You're not talking to a group, you're teaching. So you ask yourself, is it there new knowledge that you're not getting? Because you don't have time for reading. And there are things you're not reflecting about because you're busy trying to get information about corruption and sharing it, trying to look for another scandal, what is happening, how can we change this? Yes, I'm a victim too, and I struggle with it. What are some of the mechanisms, the strategies that I use? There are moments when I switch off. Of course, you will not realize. If you follow me on X, you will not know when. But there are days when you will not see me tweeting anything. There are times when you will see me very active in the evening, but all through the day you will not see me tweet anything. Actually, quite often I tweet things and leave. I don't read most of the comments. Because if I was to read the comments, I would spend the entire day there. So I'll go to Facebook, my Spire Cartoons page. I post a cartoon, immediately leave. Then I can go back after some days, read a few comments, usually the first. That is enough for me to get some insight about what people are saying or thinking about the cartoon, which is different from someone who is just there, sometimes not even tweeting anything, but they are following what others are tweeting. And they have to scan through all the people they are following. What has Spire tweeted today? What are the comments? Actually, some people will even comment. I'm seated here in the comments waiting. If you're seated in the comment section waiting, Spire has already left the tweet, is away doing something else. So you will sit there and maybe not do anything. I know sometimes these are just jokes. Yeah, but we are disrupted by the constant attention to what is happening, the endless flow of information. You just have to train yourself on when to get off. Some of us, even at home, as I said, we can no longer talk to our parents or our siblings. You're busy with Spire online. Spire, who is a stranger. I'm not saying you shouldn't be busy with Spire, but at least as you're busy with Spire, you should also be able to talk to your siblings at home. But how do you get that? It is a discipline that is very hard. It takes effort. Without effort, for many of the things that are addictive, you've seen people who are trying to quit smoking or drinking. 2 days they say, I'm off, I'm totally off. I've not taken anything for 2 days. Then the next day find them hiding, drinking and hiding. It's the same thing some of us do. You say, I'm going to keep off social media today. Before you know it, you're opening from the pocket. So that other people you told you're off are not seeing, but you're not cheating them, you're cheating yourself. So it is a hard discipline which takes trying, failing, but you keep trying. Maybe the last two. And social media and academia help us to claim the will. Yes, actually, social media contains some of the tools that can help us. but tools that are shared by other people, because the entrepreneurs, as I said, the owners of those social media apps, what they are interested in, the more addicted we are, the more business they make. The more people on X, the more Elon Musk makes money. The more people on YouTube, the more the owner of YouTube makes money. But how do they make sure that there are more people there? By making you addictive, by making it addictive. If they are able to trap you there, to catch you and not allow you to leave. As I said, that when you watch one video, maybe wait there, I only watch this small video and leave. And not even a second passes before they take you to the next video. They have captured you and kept you there. Now it means that the advertiser will want to be there because there are people who are paying attention. That's why when you're watching a song every few minutes or seconds, there is an advert coming in. The advertiser takes advantage of the fact that there are so many people watching that song. Therefore, they plant their advert there. And that's why a song that is viewed by many people will attract more payment for the artist. Because the artist, the owner of the song, is helping YouTube to invite more advertisers and to make more money. So social media can help. It has some tools. There are people who always share insightful tips. Academia, can it help us? It depends on what you mean by academia, and it depends on what kind of academia. If it is academia in the traditional sense of sit in class, get some, attend lectures, take notes, go to the library, do some reading, replicate it in an exam, that might not help. Because that kind of teaching actually is also contributing to addiction to social media and the internet, because it is sending students to AI. And for as long as students can have their questions answered by AI, it is leaving them a lot of time to spend on social media. Would I advise my child to use social media? It depends on their age. If they are, let's say, above 18 at university, maybe from back, I can allow them to join social media, but before that, senior 5, senior 6, what would they be doing on social media? Except if it is strictly for communication, and communication with a limited network. But I'm saying that today, I know that tomorrow things can change. Things are changing so fast. Before you know it, schools have adopted social media as a teaching space, and they are requiring students to have such gadgets. Are you going to keep your child away? Yeah, so some of these things I can only give tentative answers. For now, as the world is now, I wouldn't allow them to use it before university, but I also know that at a certain point they would have to make independent decisions. The best I can teach my child is how to think independently and how to make wise decisions. Policing in itself, policing a child doesn't help much. If they have not learned how to think and decide wisely, even if you police them, then simply look for an opportunity to do what you don't want them to do. How private is WhatsApp? I think this person is scared. How private is WhatsApp? Your conversations on WhatsApp. Maybe it is safe from other people, especially the public that is not interested. But if you're a public figure, or if you're someone, let's say that government has some questions about, some suspicions about, they can access what you communicate on social media. They can access many of these things because they have gadgets and tools that can help them access. Of course, we keep trying to make it harder for them so that it's not an easy job. Even if they access it, at least let them struggle. But they can access. How about our colleagues here, friends? I know of cases where someone has contacted a friend in SFC and they helped them track their wife's phone. And they brought them the entire chat. This is what you are communicating with so and so. So it's not entirely safe, but above all, you should remember that WhatsApp is owned by someone. That WhatsApp is managed by someone. It is not a no man's land. Or it's not a private space entirely. The one who owns it also owns all that information. The teachers to leverage social media, I think I talked about a bit about that. But for relevance, I mentioned that many academics or many institutions of higher learning have been hesitant to move to social media. Actually, even to many internet spaces, online spaces. At some point, that makes sense. But there are also points where you know that if you don't adopt, you're going to be rendered irrelevant. You're going to be defined out of existence. And if you refuse to adjust, the world simply leaves you there. I know that we hold certain values that are contradicted by maybe what happens on social media, but what we have to do is to devise ways of using social media in productive ways. Many of these things I've talked about so much that might be dangerous about social media, but social media, as at the beginning of the presentation, has so many advantages as well. It is said that the usefulness of a gun depends on the holder. How useful a gun is depends on who is holding it. For some people, social media is simply destroying or is simply destructive. But there are people who have benefited a lot from social media. Some people who have simply learned the tool, how does it operate, how do people relate to it, how can I position myself to benefit from this, while at the same time avoiding its dangers. And they've been able to do a lot. Some of my colleagues that refuse to join social media, we find that others are stuck to positions, others generate knowledge that they are not sharing with anyone else. They write papers, but the papers are not cited by anyone. Yet there are colleagues who have an account on X, an account on Facebook. When they publish a paper, they also go to Facebook and notify friends or whoever is following them. I have published this paper, you can find it here. The other one who has refused to go there is keeping their paper, waiting to be discovered. Maybe they will get discovered when the paper is no longer relevant. The last one, I think I've already answered this about the true purpose of education. Is it to teach knowledge, to hand over knowledge, or to cultivate wisdom? I think the answer was in the question. It was a rhetorical question. The one asking already had the answer. It should be the latter, cultivating wisdom, not just handing over. But sometimes we have to combine the two. You cannot simply go to class to train thinking without mentioning a few things that are about sharing, facts that are about sharing what others have said, maybe citing a book by someone. So it has to be a combination, but with the proper purpose. What do we want to achieve out of it at the end? I hope I have answered you. Thank you.
Doctor, for those food for thoughts. What I've got out of this, combining all the information in that lecture, he said, he quoted something. Are you on phone? That is why you are, or are you thinking that is why you are? So I think it should be a food for thought for all of us. Thank you very much, Doctor. I call upon the Director, Quality Assurance, Dr. Chisike Abdul, to give a vote of thanks to our guest. You're welcome, Doctor.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I thank our presenter and doctor, I would like to thank everyone who has taken his time or her time and is us here. Actually, it would look so bad for us to be here when we have invited such an important person when the quorum is not enough. Now, on behalf of the management, Prof, we are really grateful. We are really grateful for your presentation. Actually, I think when you started giving your speech, I don't know whether you were informed about what transpired in the meeting when we invited you. I personally, I'm one of those ones who are against, let me say, his coming. Not because he's a bad person, not because he's not an uninformed professor, but the trend of events, Prof, that has been surrounding you. We thought really, as a younger institution, we thought we were putting ourselves in mistakes. But later on, we were informed by your former student by sharing a lot of presentation from elsewhere. Because I myself, I have known Professor, I think for the last, I would say 5 years. Because I went to Makerere, when I was doing my PhD from there, I used to see you going to where your fine art is done, and later on I got problems to find out whether professor is part of that college of engineering or is in humanities. Not until when one day I was part of the public that was witnessing when Dr. Musama William was presenting his doctoral thesis, and I found you there as the chair. And then that's when I started gazetting myself and getting to know where you really belong. Prof, thank you very much for your presentation. Like I said, when a thing was read to us, when the road is the driver. Actually, I was looking at the events of the presentations and the workshops you were doing within Kampala, and the most recent one which caught every person's attention, apart from these corruption tendencies of the parliament, of showing how the status of the roads we are moving in within Kampala. Prof has talked about the challenges, how we can overcome the challenges of social media. Yes, Prof, I am an administrator and I am an academic staff, not only here but elsewhere. But of course, I think this is the science which would have been presented before even the staff, but it's unfortunate that the staff we have here are few. If you have a challenge that you come up with a topic, you get sub-themes or sub-topics. Before even you could start presenting and arranging what you have given, already the students have answers. And the challenge now we are getting is that you cannot stand in front of the students when you don't have facts. And these students, what they believe in is that what you speak or what you give is exactly what has been given, either by the artificial intelligence or any other. And the artificial intelligence has gone as far even asking, was the answer given to the problem responded to, or is it responding to the question? Do you have any other challenge that you would want to be assisted? So that's where we are going. And I was sharing with a colleague there, and I said the challenge we have is that now I think Prof has talked about the critical thinking in the 21st century. We are training people, the critical thinkers, to be problem solvers. But now with these errors where people can get content and the answers on the screen plate, I don't know where we are going. So thank you, Prof, for those wonderful presentations. He has already talked about how you can be trained to overcome these ones. He said, I think it's all about discipline. And he has talked about that if you want to rest from maybe social media, because I personally, I was forced to leave my phone in my phone office. But when I traveled with my computer, I forgot that even on the computer there is also WhatsApp. So even one of the colleagues within the presentation is here was texting me and saying, are you seeing the presentation? And we went about the presentation. And when we talked about how people recited something related to research and said, you have not seen people trying to text and surf and do other means of how they can engage with social media. I personally, think you did not see me, but I was almost listening and then doing so. So, Prof, thank you very much for your presentation. As management, we are really grateful for your coming. I think we are not up to that expectations that you can accept our invitation. And I am sure with the likes of Ashraf, Uthman, and office of the principal, we should always continue having such engagements, because I don't know whether you can be the way you are right now after this presentation. The historian is here, where I think we used to study history, European history, where they said they learned nothing and forgot nothing. I don't know whether we can come here and we learn nothing. Actually, we are not the same way as you have come. So we are grateful, Prof, and we are praying that if another invite arises, please, we say always accept our invitations. We are a young, growing institution that was established in 2011 with one program, and 2012 we added on another program that is diploma in education. The other was diploma in business. We went with those ones up to recently that I think at around 2019, 2018, we had also a diploma in ICT, and Prof. Right Line we have recently, in the previous, last year I think, we were awarded to be other degree awarding students. Now we are offering degrees in ICT, business, Islamic studies, education. And of course, with the team we are seeing around there and others who are not around, we have also I was able to think about coming up with postgraduate degrees in respective areas. And Prof, you never know that since you are a kind of person who can also accept and make these other younger institutions grow, we may invite you and we say, let Prof Spire Sentongo be a visiting lecture. Because what we know, let's say 1 hour to our students and even us ourselves is something that can change the minds of the rest. These students, it is a milestone on our side. I think Dr. Ashraf Mugaula was saying that ever since this institution started, we have never had a public lecture of this kind. And you know, these students, when you see them, whenever you keep on talking to them, we cannot change anything. They are seeing us as usual people. But when we have people like you and you come and talk to them, and then later on they get to know the people we are associating with, they can also give credit and even respect our lecturers. So, Prof, thank you very much. We wish you all the best. And I think the management and the team that has arranged this, we are grateful for putting effort. I never knew that this would happen as part of the management. Not a mere management, but I sit near to the principal. So whatever I'm saying here, these are words that might have been spoken of by principal. And principal was engaged in a serious meeting at the embassy, was going to meet the ambassador of the Republic of Iran, and he said, please engage and handle issues as they are supposed to be and make our visitor be happy. And Prof, I don't know whether after here we are going for a cocktail. I think that is it. So colleagues, thank you very much for your coming. Students, thank you very much for your coming. Prof, we are really grateful for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I think all of us are not the same. That is the fact. I take this opportunity to thank Al-Mustafa top management, the administrators, the guild cabinet, the lecturers, the entire students community. Thank you very much. Barakallahu fikum. May God richly bless you. Like what Doctor said, if it wasn't you, we would feel so embarrassed. Thank you, Dr. Ashraf, and your office, where I'm part, that is research and innovation, for really organizing this lecture. We are very grateful. So this marks the end of our lecture, our program, the first one. After this, we are going out for a group photo. Then after that group photo, we shall come back for the cultural gala closure or awarding ceremony. Then the Nkoba Zambogo group has something special for Doctor, and I think they will walk him down to present it to him. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Kila mtu kaambie sogea nyuma. Kila mtu sogea nyuma.
Ndaje ndingala hiyo. Sema kwa. Njikaka.
That is statement. Thank you very much, bro. We appreciate labda siku sana. Labda.